here's what I want to do. I'm gonna read the entire parable all at once because I think we can kind of get a feel for the speed and the tone a little bit. And then we're going to U-turn, go all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to do a little Hebrew Jewish theology lesson. Is that okay with you? It doesn't really matter if it's okay with you. I'm not asking permission, actually. I'm telling you what we're doing. If you don't like that... For it will be like a man going on a journey. Anyone feel like, I've been here on Wednesdays, this sounds familiar? Jesus starts multiple parables this way. Who called his servants, and he entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of the servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew what I reap, that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Let that settle for just a moment. Okay, here's what we're going to do on the imaginary whiteboard. We're going to talk about talents because, first of all, I think we're all on the same page, but this word has this unfortunate connection with a word we have in English, that you're talented, and I want to make sure everyone knows that's not what we're talking about. Everybody just nod. That's not what we're talking about. A talent, we have actually talked about this not last week, but the week before. Not in the wood chips, not in the wood chips. The people on YouTube aren't going to know, but we can hear this pretty loud. Now listen, this is what I want you to know. 2 weeks ago, we talked about this parable. It was the servant who was forgiven this astronomical debt. Do you remember? And we pointed out that the debt is so large when you actually go and look up how much it is, there's no way that there is actually a servant that could have racked up this much debt. They'll pass. And so the whole point is Jesus is being so extreme to point out that this man, do you remember what he asks for? He asks for 2 things. He asks for mercy and he asks for time. And he says, if you just give me mercy and give me time, I'll pay off the debt. And the master in the parable says, there's no way you can pay off the debt. There's only one option, and it's me canceling your debt. And the whole point of the parable was to be reminded of how great a debt sin is, and only Jesus can forgive the debt. You all remember that? But in that parable, it also talked about talents. And so I think what Matthew wants us to do is connect these 2 things. Because here's the deal. Talents is not a super common word in the Bible, is it? It's not like this exchange of money that happens all over the place. It's not like denarii. It's not like this thing that we hear about all the time. So we hear about it, and we should be thinking, what else do I know about this? So here's the deal for a recap. A talent is, think of a gold or silver brick. Anybody ever had this experience before? Like somebody is carrying something really heavy and they're playing it cool and they're like, hey, hold this. And you grab it, maybe it's a doorstop or something, and you're like, whoa, it's very heavy. You ever have that? That is what is going on with a talent. A talent is a brick. Rome often changed how a talent was inscripted or how it was stamped. Around the time of Jesus, Rome had approved two versions of the talent. One was somewhere in the 30-pound range, and one was in the 75-pound range. So think a 75-pound brick of precious metal. And what it was for large business transactions. No paper currency. And so if you wanted to go purchase, say some shipping vessels in a port, you're going to go buy them. There's no wire transfers. There's no credit card swiping on Square Reader. There's none of that. So how do you exchange the money? You would usually meet the other person at a central location, somewhere where they're going to store money, or they might have a safe house, they might have something in their home, and you would bring a talent. Otherwise, you'd be a wagon full of loose coins. Does that make sense? And so a talent is an enormous amount of money. Even one talent. We could read this story and think, one talent, that seems meager. I don't know the exchange rate on gold, but 75 pounds of gold would retire you right now, just so you know. So that's what a talent is. A talent comes in two different forms. So that's what I want you to know first. The second is we're going to go on a rabbit trail, and it's a very significant one. So I hope that you'll bear with me. If you get confused, look to the footnotes because you'll find the information you're looking for. The Greek word for talent, you ready for this? It's a tough one. Talenta. Say talenta. Talenta. Talenta does not mean brick of gold. It means generically the weight or a weight, a measure. It's an economic term that means just generically it's a measure. And over time that became known as this thing called this ingot of gold or silver that they called a talent. Talent means a weight or a measure. This is very important. Okay, all on the same page? Okay, now Jesus, he's in the temple complex. He's teaching Jews. He's teaching religious leaders. He's in the big leagues now. We all remember that? So he's teaching in the big leagues, and he uses this word on purpose. How many of you know Jesus chooses his words wisely, and he says exactly what he means to say? So he uses this word. It's not a common word, but he uses the word talent. Now here's what's very significant, and I hope that it's clear so that I don't lose you. In the Old Testament, there is a concept that also means the weight. In Hebrew, the word is kabod. Say kabod. Kabod literally just means the weight. You got it? Except here's the thing. In the Old Testament, when Hebrew people use the word kabod, it doesn't actually mean the weight. It means the glory of God. The weight is the glory of God. I put an example here from Exodus. And the glory, the kabod of God, rests in the tabernacle and the temple. It rests in the Holy of Holies, the holiest place, on the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. You don't have to know what that is right now, but nod your head and just pretend like you're all on the same page. Okay, we're good. So the kabod, the presence of God, the glory of God, rests in this place. Kabod does not mean glory. It literally just means weight. So some of your versions might say this, the weight of God's glory. Have you heard that phrase before? That is a way to try to keep that original meaning of the word. There's something about God's glory that comes with like a weight to it. Okay, all on the same page. Now, in the first century, Jews are largely speaking a street language called, anybody know? Aramaic. They're speaking Aramaic. In Aramaic, there's a word. It's called yaquar. Say yaquar. Yaquar means, anybody want to guess? The weight. But when Hebrew people put the word the in front of it and they call it the weight, guess what they mean? They mean the presence, the glory of God. When it goes into the Septuagint and it gets translated, this is where the issue is. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. It gets translated in this word, doxa, which means glory. Greeks had a word for it, but it didn't get translated as the weight. Okay, so we got it right now? So Jesus is now using this word. It's not very common. He uses it in front of all the leaders of the temple. He only uses it in 2 stories in the Bible, and both times are done in front of the leaders of Israel. And he says, a master left home, and he left everything he owned to some servants, and he handed them the weight. Every single person in that audience, what is the first thing they think of? They think of the glory of God, because that's what they've been taught since they were little children. Are we all on the same page? Okay, so let me read it again. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them his property. A parable. It's a surface-level story that begs you to ask deeper spiritual, moral questions. Who is the master? It's an open-ended question. You're allowed to participate. Who's the master? It's God. Okay. He leaves behind. It doesn't mean he leaves his people. It's just a parable. He calls his servants. Who are the servants? His people. It's his possession, is his people, and he entrusts what is his. And what does he entrust to them? His glory. Okay, are we all on the same page? We're digging. We're going to get the gem, and when we do, it's going to be so simple and so basic. Every single person in the room will get it. Okay, so the Pharisees are given this responsibility. They are to steward the weight. They are to be stewards of the glory of God. The glory, the presence of God, rests in the Holy of Holies on the mercy seat. And here's the last thing we're going to connect before we move forward. The place where Jews believe that God dwells is where? In the temple. The Holy of Holies gets entered one time per year. Does anybody know what that day is called? It's called the Day of Atonement in Hebrew. It's Yom Kippur. Okay, on this day, the high priest of Israel would go into the Holy of Holies and offer a sacrifice for the sins of all the people. Are we on the same page? And so the presence of God in the Holy of Holies was known as the place of mercy. It's the mercy seat. So what is the glory of God in the Old Testament? How is the understanding? The glory of God is the power and the mercy of God. Okay. Put a bookmark in that. Let's move forward and let's see how this story unfolds. Here's the example I told you from Exodus. This is in regards to the tabernacle. This word kabod shows up over and over and over when it's talking about the tabernacle and the temple, because it's talking about the presence of God. God says this in Exodus, "It shall be a regular burnt offering throughout your generations at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, where I will meet with you to speak to you there. There I will meet with the people of Israel, and it shall be sanctified by my kabod," my weight. That's what it says. It will be sanctified by the weight of me, translated as glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting. I will pronounce it clean. That's what God wants to do to you, pronounce you clean by the weight of his glory. Aaron also and his sons I will consecrate to serve me as priests. I will dwell among the people of Israel, and I will be their God, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. Okay, let's pause. Any questions? We're all good? Okay. Lots of people still looking down at those footnotes. Okay, so this parable, this is what I want us to hear before we continue. This parable is a parable about mercy and forgiveness. And we're going to read it, and we might think like, what? That doesn't make sense. But I think if we start to think of these talents are the extension of God's presence. Those who are forgiven much, forgive much. Have you heard this phrase before? Those who are extended a great deal of the weight, guess what they do with it? they go make more. That's what they do. Why? Because those who have been forgiven, who have received the glory and the forgiveness of God and oh, yeah, Pat, you can move the Legos. They multiply it. That's the story. So I think here's the question that we're going to have to ask ourselves. What do we do when we receive the weight? When the glory and the presence of God is with us, and the Bible says it lives in you, you are the temple of the Holy Spirit, what do we do to steward that? So often we think of stewarding the gifts and the things that we have. What about stewarding the very presence of God that dwells in you? I think that is the question. So let's continue. He who had received, did I skip some? Oh, then he went away. Sorry. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. He multiplied this presence. He multiplied the forgiveness, the mercy, the characteristics of God. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. Awesome. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug a hole and tossed it in. Here's what I want you to notice. Do you notice that the master never one time tells these servants what they're supposed to do with this thing? There's no instructions. I'm giving you all of my property. That's what it says. And then he just goes away. What do you make of that? How are you supposed to know? Oh, that's a good question. How are you supposed to know what to do? You know the master. I was reading this book a while back, and it wasn't in preparation of this, but it makes perfect sense. It was N.T. Wright. Some of you might know N.T. Wright. And he said these words. He said, mercy is only exists in gift form. Mercy doesn't exist in any other form. Mercy only exists in the gift form. That's the form it comes in. And so if you know the true characteristic of mercy, do you remember 2 weeks ago we talked about the mercy that this evil servant got? He got his entire debt wiped out, but did he understand mercy? No, because he saw this as his opportunity to put his hands around his buddy's neck, slam him against the wall and say, you owe me $10, even though he just got millions of dollars canceled in debt. He doesn't understand that mercy is a gift, and a gift, when you have something that's supposed to be a gift, can you hold it? Is it yours to hold? You can hold it. It might be God, you should answer. You never know. You cannot hold on to this thing. If you hold on to it, you're showing God that you don't know how it works. If you hold on to this thing, say you dig a hole in the yard and you toss it in because you don't understand, all you're doing is saying, I don't understand that mercy exists only in gift form. It's meant to be extended to others because it was extended to me. That's what the last parable was about, and that's what this one is about. So the reason it doesn't they don't get told, this is what I want you to do with this money, is because they're supposed to know. Because if you know the master, you know that this is a gift that gets extended. So here's the reframing. The person who received 5 talents, let's talk about him or her for a moment. Sometimes if we think like, oh, this is the trustworthy person that can have a lot of money, we might get a little bit of a skewed idea of who this person is. But if we're thinking of it as this person has received the largest dose of this gift called mercy, what kind of person are we talking about? Eventually, yeah, what were you saying? Someone like Paul. And what do you mean by that? He went from Saul to Paul. He went from killing people to spreading the gospel around the known world. Because those who are forgiven much, forgive much. That is what the Bible tells us. This man who receives 5 is someone who has been proven to be trustworthy with 5 because he's received it. He's received a great deal. Now, we don't have to go all the way 2,000 years ago into the Bible because not always, but this is like a general principle. I've been around church leadership for like a dozen years. There is definitely a correlation from very messy, broken people, especially in like addiction culture. that come out of that and get clean. And when you sit with them, you can just feel that you are totally free to be yourself. These are often people who talk super freely about how God has set them free. You feel at ease in their presence, that you don't have to sugarcoat it. You can just be yourself. Why is that? Because those who are forgiven much forgive much. They are a reflection of the heart of God because they've seen it and they've experienced it themselves. A couple other notes just here before we move on. I love that it says the master left and at once they got to work. They did it at once. It was immediate, except for the last guy. We'll talk about him in a moment. But they don't need prompting. They don't need an alarm clock. It just says the master left, the master is gone. We got to go do the stuff that we're supposed to do with this thing. And we go out and we multiply. We go out and we multiply. They just get to work. Exactly what Dana said. They get to work because they know the master. Now, after a long time, that's an interesting little phrase Jesus has used a few times. After a long time, the master of the servants came back to settle the accounts. Before we go any further, because I might go too quickly and forget, there's an application point here that I think we need to remember. It's that the master will settle accounts. It's very simple. It's not tricky. It's very basic. We will give account for what we have done with the presence of God that dwells in us. Now here's the good news. In the parable, it makes room for not everybody is going to do incredible giant things. Some people are going to get 5 of this talent thing, and they're going to multiply till 5. And the point isn't, I got 10. Hey, you who got 2, you only multiplied to 4. I have way more than you. Look at how awesome I am. That's not the point. It says each according to his ability. It says that in the scripture. God's expectation is not that somehow Ricardo and Arian need to have like the same productivity. It's not that everybody is uniform the same and we got to go, 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 go. It's this. God has given you a gift. What have you done to steward your gift or your gifts? The things that God has given you, they're all different. And the way that we steward them is different. Maybe your impact in your calling is literally like, for 30 years, I am going to make a huge impact on this block in my neighborhood. That's going to be where I make a huge impact. Maybe you're like, I am high capacity. God made me that way. I have huge vision. I'm going to change a county or a country, or I'm going to go change the world. God, if he's put that in you and that's your stewardship, that's what he asks, and he's going to hold it to account. So after a long time, he came back to settle his accounts. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I've made 5 more talents. I doubled what you gave me. I doubled what you gave me. And the master said, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Now this is some end times language. This is language of a final judgment of sorts. You will give account, and Jesus will invite you and welcome you into eternal rest. There's a reason this is usually the phrase that we use at memorials, right? Celebrations of life. People will say, well done, good and faithful servant. It'll get printed on programs and put on screens because that's what this is about. Jesus will settle the accounts. Well done, good and faithful servant. And he also, who had 2 talents, came forward saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 more talents. And his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. I wrote down this quote from Charles Spurgeon about entering the joy of your master. This is what he wrote. This is not the servant's portion, but the master's portion shared with his faithful servants. Not so much that we shall have a joy of our own, as that we shall enter into the joy of our Lord. Charles Spurgeon, by the way, has a quote about everything. So if you ever wanted to venture outside of the Bible in a relatively safe way and you wanted some quote, Charles Spurgeon, I don't even know if the guy slept. I think he just read the Bible and quoted it all the time. He also, dun dun dun, who had received 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, now this is where it gets interesting. I knew you. I want you to look at this word, I knew you. It's an interesting word. The parable has a crux point, and this is it. Because I think this is what Matthew wants you to know. It's the irony. The first 2 guys do not say, I knew you. I knew you to be gracious and wonderful in all of your ways, and so it was my joy to go out and serve you. They just did it. They knew him. The one who claims to know God absolutely 100% does not know him. It's the irony of the parable. I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. Let's talk about that for a moment. We've talked about scattering seed and reaping, right? What do you think this is saying? You didn't work for it? Yeah? I think that's embedded in there. I think he's saying, look, in the parable, in the setting of this agricultural metaphor, here's the field. I don't think this guy recognized whose field this is. And it doesn't actually matter who scattered the seed and who did the tilling and all of this, because it belongs to God. Remember, he left it to them. It was his property. This guy is going to get lost in the weeds of maybe I did the seeding, maybe I did the tilling, but you get all the labor of the hard work. All it's showing us is a misunderstanding of who God is. Why? He says it right off, I knew you as a hard man. Now the Bible doesn't tell us, but if you had to guess, how do you think the first 2 guys would have described the master? Generous. I didn't even think of that word. That's the best word. Generous, what'd you say? Fair. Yeah. Loving. Kind. You left this giant property and all that you owned you entrusted to us. What an honor. You did that. That's who you are. You are a hard man. You take everything on this field even if you didn't do the work. So I was afraid. Now I think there's a little distinction here. The Bible doesn't say it. This is my commentary. Are we to have a healthy fear of the Lord? That's a whole sermon we're not going to get into. But I think a healthy fear of the Lord is rooted in the knowledge of who God actually is. It's not, I'm afraid of you, you're going to hit me. It's, I understand that you will hold us to account. And as the backdrop of my life, I don't dwell on that I'm going to be punished or those sorts of things, but I'm going to live a life worthy of the calling I've received. This guy says, I was afraid of you. I totally misunderstood your character and I was totally afraid of you. So I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you can have it back. So if the talent is about the presence of God, the mercy, the grace, the forgiveness of God for you, he got it, decided, I don't want the responsibility of stewarding this. I might do it wrong. I might anger this hard master of mine. I'm just going to bury it in the dirt. What does it tell us? He doesn't understand that mercy only exists in gift form. You can't hold on to it. By holding on to it, you tell everyone you don't know what it is. Are we all on the same page? Matthew Poole, who was a 1600s theologian, wrote this in his commentary. Woe do the wicked have a canny ability to deflect blame unto others with their rhetorical tricks. The reason I did nothing is actually your fault. I didn't do anything wrong. You did stuff wrong to make me afraid of you, so I did nothing. And I was afraid, so you should give me a free pass. Again, this is just based entirely on a misunderstanding of God's character and nature. I do want to tell you one thing. Burying it in the ground. If there's a sense that my job as a human being is self-preservation, to make it as far down this human being timeline as I can, winning with as many trophies on the shelf as possible, does burying it in the ground actually make a little sense? Because maybe it's a risk analysis and, wow, this guy's very powerful. I don't want to get it wrong. I'd hate to anger him. So it might not be the best choice, but because I analyzed all the risks, I'm going to bury it in the ground. Why? Because my number one goal is self-preservation. If I give it away or I try to do something with it and I don't get any in return, I might get in trouble. Now that's a misunderstanding of who God is, but is that not a cultural thing that people do? We'll analyze the risk, we'll decide what we're willing to do. Did the first two guys analyze the risks? They gave it away and it came back twofold. Isn't that incredible? Burying it in the ground, I think, speaks to this self-preservation safety goal of ours, that I'm just trying to make it to as far down this timeline with good health and good fortune as I can. I got to make sure I don't cross the wrong people. And I thought you, God, were one of the wrong people to cross, so I decided to do nothing. I wrote this: when God gives us something, it doesn't render it no longer belonging to God. It's a gift extended to us as stewards, not owners. I think this is very important. When God gives us things, if we listen to our culture, we think, I own this thing. And while there might be like a title to your car that literally says you own it, God says the gifts that I've given are to be stewarded for my glory because you know who I am. That is what it looks like to be a steward, not an owner. Even with your cool stuff, even with your awesome stuff, the stuff you've wanted since you were a little kid and I finally have it. It's not to be, as the Bible says, it's not to cast your pearls before pigs and entrust things of great value to people who are not ready for them, but it's to discern and say, hey, this is for your glory, God. Is this what you're calling me to? I'm not using it. Have at it. And so here's my question as we kind of head to the finish line. This is one that we can mull around in. How do we bury it in the ground? How do we bury it in the ground? I don't know. Done the risk analysis. It's pretty risky. When we feel that nudge of like sharing faith or being a little bit more open and then we recoil and think, I might rub someone the wrong way. Is that burying it in the ground? Yeah. Is seeing a need that we could meet and thinking, you know what, I really need that. And getting confused about what we actually need and what we want, and they're not the same thing. Is that burying it in the ground? I'm not saying, like, just go out here and just, my bank account is now in cash, here, have at it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying with the discernment God has given us, maybe we need a reframe of what it looks like to bury things in the ground and what it looks like to say, it's yours anyways, I'm here to steward it, and I'm not afraid to give it away because you already gave me everything I need. That's what this is about. But the master said to him, you wicked, slothful servant. I'm going to forget this. Laziness is a sin. Laziness is a sin. Do you remember what the first guys did as soon as the master left? It said they immediately got to work. You wicked and slothful servant. This is what God calls this guy. Of all the things he could say about this guy who blew it, wicked, you do not know me, you have no place with me, and lazy, slothful. Interesting. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and I gather where I scattered no seed. I love that God just owns it. I do that. You want to know why? It's my field. You work in it. You're a laborer in the field. This is not your field. This is my field. And whatever grows here is mine to take. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. Now, sometimes you might go on YouTube and you might hear a sermon, and I'm not going to get in the weeds, but it's the sermon of capitalism, and hey, if God gave you a big dividend this month, you should tithe it. That would be a good steward. That's not this message. My understanding of the you should have at least gone to the bank and got some interest is basically anyone with 2 brain cells who even remotely knew me could have gotten something in return. Would you agree? Yeah. I think that's what it's saying, not who are the bankers and how do you get interest. Because, by the way, Jews are not supposed to charge each other interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. Why? This is a man or woman who understands the grace of God. They'll know what to do with it. Give it to them. For everyone who has, more will be given. And he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Give your talent to the 10. I love what it says. This is the last I'm going to say, and then we're going to finish with a discussion question. When he says, you have been entrusted little, and now I'm going to give you a lot. I started reading this, and it's actually, there's actually studies. It's called, you could look it up, the capacity of responsibility. These are studies that are done. Has anyone ever heard of this before? Let me explain it. I remember going off to college when I was 18 years old. In that first week, you have your orientation, you get your class load, you're looking at the syllabus, which tells you like which books you're going to read and all the units. And I remember trying to map it out. Like I've always been a checklist person. Like I'm going to get my planner, I'm going to map it all out, I'm going to figure out like when I do what homework all the time. I remember looking at it, and I remember this sinking feeling that no human on earth could possibly do all this in a week. Have you ever had that happen to you? And you're looking at it like, how in the world is this possible? And then, if you've ever been to college, 3-4 years later, you're a senior in college, and you look at the freshmen, and you think, they have no idea how easy they have it. They barely have any work to do. Do you know that feeling? Why is that? Was it that the freshmen in college really had the ability to do it all and it was no big deal? They were just like blowing it out of proportion? Or was it a capacity problem and they hadn't grown in their capacity? So often we use this in our faith where we think, man, that person's doing so much more, and we don't actually ask ourselves the real question, which is, what do I have right now? And am I stewarding it well? Because the Bible has a promise that as you steward it well, God will entrust you with more. So the real problem is not how did they get that, I want that. It's I haven't been faithful yet and learned how to steward what little I have. So I wrote some things down in some of these studies on the capacity of responsibility. So how does it happen in 4 years where one day you cannot believe that any human being could ever read all these books and write all these papers, and 4 years later you could do it in your sleep, you could have a 40-hour-a-week job, and it would be no big deal. This is common also when you have children. The first time you have your first child, it's like absolutely like, oh my gosh, how do people do this, right? There's a common thing. I do Dadder Day. I talk to dads, people with one kid. When you have a young baby, you have your first one, you know what people say? I can't believe anybody would ever have another one of these. And then 6 months go by, and it's like amnesia, like, I would totally have another. Why? It's not because anything has changed except your capacity to carry the responsibility. So how do you grow in your capacity of responsibility? This is extra biblical. The first thing you do is you have to take on responsibilities. It can be little things. You could assign them to yourself. I assign to myself the responsibility of making the bed in the morning. And then there has to be consistent follow-through. Not only do I assign that responsibility to myself, I'm going to follow through with it no matter what. Well, what happens when you're right in the middle of putting the first pillow on, then you get a phone call? Oh, and now you're 30 minutes. You have to follow through no matter what. This is how you build capacity. Consistent follow-through on responsibilities the pattern of human behavior leads to humans wanting to take on more responsibilities. Isn't that interesting? There's something in you that wants more responsibilities once you've shown yourself that, oh, I could do that. I want to do more. I must have made a joke about all your kids, Brian, but consistent follow through. And what this leads to, it leads to humans learning strategies for doing things more efficiently, doing them better. It leads to self-awareness of your strengths and your weaknesses. So not only are you like growing in your capacity, you're also growing in your own reflection of like, you know what, I'm not that good at this thing. I didn't know that about myself. Why? Because I never tried. Or, wow, I had no idea. I'm really good at this. I never knew. Why? Because I never did it before. It leads to growing in autonomy, and it leads to ownership. And then I love this. One study said one of the side effects of people in a 5-year study was heightened empathy. Why would that be? As I take on more responsibility, this often happens. You go off to college, you're a young adult, you rebel against your parents. They knew nothing. My parents, they knew nothing. They were terrible at it. I can't believe they did that. Then you grow in your capacity. Maybe for the very first time you have no roommates and you're in your own place and you're like, oh, wow, this is a lot of work. Maybe you have, maybe you get married or you have a child and you're like, wow, this is a lot. Wow. Maybe my mom and dad weren't so bad at this after all, right? You grow in empathy of understanding. So all of that is to say, I think that God is calling us to grow in our capacity, not of responsibility in this sense, but to steward the presence that he has given us. In the first discussion question back here, one of the guys at the table said, stewarding a moment is something that God calls us to. Stewarding the conversation around your table is a gift that God has given you. Will you steward it well by listening? I took it to heart because honestly, when I leave here, I'm exhausted. And oftentimes I'll put music on in the car, even though I know if I turn the music off and wait 5 minutes, the quiet will say, hey, Dad? Yeah. Can I ask you something? And those moments are stewarding good moments, and I don't always have them. So here's the final discussion. Oh, I want to tell you one more thing. We have time. This is awesome. Some of you know this. I'm so sorry. I'm going to say the word. It's what it was called in Greek. It sounds terrible. It's not what you think it is. So let me just say it, and then really quickly I'll tell you what it is. There's something in Roman culture called the love slave or the love servant. Has anybody ever heard of this before? The love slave. Oftentimes in the Roman world, a slave was not a permanent position. It was often someone who sold themselves into slavery in order to pay off a family debt. Oftentimes a son would do it to pay off the debt of a sibling or their parents that are aging and unable to work. So they would say, I will give myself to you as labor for 3 or 5 years, and at the end of that term that we agreed on, the debt that my family owes you is canceled. Does that make sense? The agreement was if I sell myself into slavery or into servitude to you, your responsibility is to feed me, to shelter me, to care for me. You don't pay me, but you keep track of my pay to cancel the debt. Does that all make sense? When the debt was paid off, there was something they called it a love slave or a love servant. It was somebody who would say, I want to remain in this position. I want to serve you. I want to be your servant permanently. And there was a ritual and a service to make it official. It was a very official thing. Does anyone know what they would do? They would pierce the ear with an awl and a hammer. Does anybody know where they would pierce the ear at? On the doorpost. Some of you already know this. Ear to the doorpost, awl and hammer, boom. Sounds pretty gnarly. But there's some imagery going on. The first is on the doorpost. What does that mean? That means this house I will serve. And the ear piercing came to be known as this. My master owns my ear. I will listen for his voice. I will know his voice above all voices. His needs are the things I'm listening for, and I will meet them. That's what I'm signing myself up to do. The reason I say that is because these 3 servants who are left all alone. The master gives them all of his possessions. It turns out that a master would not usually just give any servant or slave all the possessions. The Bible is probably lending itself to telling us that these three have said, I will be the one who listens for your voice. You can trust me. I serve this house. You have my ear. What's very interesting is one of them says that and does the exact opposite. Doesn't get it. Thinks they get it, doesn't get it. So here's the discussion question. What does it mean that mercy only exists in gift form? How have you experienced the mercy and grace of God in your own life? Discuss a person or situation where you would like to grow in your ability to extend what God has so graciously given to you to others. And then I put a little Luke quote in there. So we'll take the last 10, 11 minutes, and then I'll come up and we'll wrap up and pray from there. Ready, set, go. I want to do one quick correction. I don't know if I actually said this or not, but I was kicking myself a little bit. I think that maybe I had said that the love servant was a Roman thing. It's actually in the Bible. It's in the book of Exodus. So I'm not sure if what I meant to say is it existed in the Roman Empire, not that Rome invented it. It's actually a Hebrew concept. So if you wrote that down, cross it out and say Hebrew, not Roman. If you're watching on YouTube, somebody will comment and not have watched the end, and you'll know they didn't watch the end. With that, just a reminder, next week, no Bible study, but there is a talent show. You should come. It will be awesome. I won't see you for a handful of weeks. Natalie has her surgery next Monday, so I'll be out at least 3 weeks. So you can be praying for her, especially that everything just goes to plan. And, sometimes when you're just doing the trudging long work of rehab and all that stuff, just pray for, perspective, just so we just keep in mind that God's goodness goes before us. We've done good at that in the past, but I think that has a lot to do with how many people are praying for us. So please pray for us again. And with that, I would like to pray, and we'll wrap up. God, thank you that your presence dwells in us. God, we just ask that you would give us boldness, you would give us courage to be people who go out at once and get to work. God, we just bring before you all the things that make us nervous or anxious. We hand them over to you. We thank you that what you're asking of us is just to be responsible, just to be good stewards of what you've already given us, and you'll grow our capacity. We can trust in that. So God, we give ourselves to you. We thank you that every week when we gather, we ask that you would make us more like your son Jesus, and you're faithful to do it. So we ask that you would go before us. I pray that as the weeks just continue, that you would go before those teenagers who are nervous about sharing their talents with us, that they would be bold and courageous in that. I pray that you would just continue to work in our midst, that you would bond people together over your word, that there would be deep spiritual friendships that last. We give you this time. We ask that you would help us.